Indian Larry was a legendary chopper builder, artist, and fearless stuntman to say the least. He was born Lawrence D. Schmidt on April 28, 1949, in Orange County, New York, the oldest of three children. He had two younger sisters, Diane and Tina. Growing up near the United States Military Academy at West Point, his life was shaped by discipline and high expectations. His father, Augustus Steen, worked as a carpenter at the academy and hoped Larry would follow in his footsteps, but Larry had other plans for himself. From a young age, he was fascinated by machines and spent hours tinkering, taking things apart and putting them back together, much to his father's frustration. Larry's childhood wasn't easy. He attended a strict Catholic school where harsh punishments were common. The nuns would beat his knuckles with rulers until they bled and lock him in dark closets as punishment. When his mother noticed the bruises on his hands and asked what happened, Larry would lie, saying he had been in fights and hiding the truth to avoid bringing more trouble back home. Even as a child, Larry's rebellious spirit and creativity were undeniable. He once attempted to build an explosive in his family's basement, intending to blow up his school. The experiment went horribly wrong, costing him his finger, but it only deepened his passion for building and creating. By his teenage years, Larry was modifying bikes and building custom machines. He bought his first motorcycle, a 1939 Harley Knucklehead, with his savings and immediately took it apart. It took him 9 months to put it back together, and by then, he was hooked on motorcycles for life. After high school, Larry moved to California to join his sister Diane, who was involved in the counterculture of the 1960s. He quickly embraced this lifestyle, experimenting with drugs and living on the edge. Tragedy struck in 1971 when Diane was murdered, leaving Larry devastated. He accompanied her body back to their hometown for the funeral. Grief pushed him further into his addiction, and he began robbing stores to support his drug habit. In 1972, after a failed bank robbery, he was shot at by the police, with one bullet grazing his face. He was arrested and sentenced to 3 years in Sing Sing prison. Prison became a turning point for Larry. While incarcerated, he earned his GED. He took welding and mechanic courses and immersed himself in philosophy and self-education books that his mother sent him. When he was released in 1976, he was ready to turn a new page in his life. Larry moved to New York City, where he became part of the underground culture. In the 1980s, he worked at various motorcycle shops, honing his craft. At times, he rebuilt motors out of his apartment. Some of the shops he worked at included 6th Street Specials in the East Village and Psycho Cycles on the Lower East Side. That's where he teamed up with builders like Paul Cox. Together, they developed a distinctive New York chopper style, and it was characterized by a stripped-down, high handlebar, foot clutch, jockey shift, no front brake or fender, small gas tank, open pipe, kickstart only, stock rake bikes, to take it back to the old school of the 1960s. Larry's reputation grew as he designed custom bikes that showcased his unique style. His first major recognition came in 1987 when Iron Horse magazine featured his 1950s Indian Chief chopper with red and orange flames. It was at this time that he earned the nickname Indian Larry, after the iconic chopped Indian motorcycle he rode through the streets of New York. However, Larry still continued to struggle in his personal life. Throughout the 1980s and the early 1990s, he battled heroin and alcohol addiction. In 1991, at a rock bottom, he was found wandering the Bowery, cutting himself with a broken bottle. He was stopped by a police officer who pulled a gun on him, and Larry replied, "Just shoot me." He was taken to Bellevue Hospital, where he began his road to recovery. It wasn't easy for Larry. He relapsed multiple times, even tattooing the years 1991 and 1994 on his arms as a reminder of his battles with addiction. But by the late 1990s, he finally broke free and emerged stronger and more focused than ever. In 2000, Larry and his friends opened up Gasoline Alley, a custom bike shop in Brooklyn. Here, Larry perfected his craft, designing bikes that blended art with engineering. Creations like Grease Monkey, Daddy-O, and Wild Child became legendary, combining old school techniques with modern performance. Larry's fame skyrocketed in the early 2000s when he appeared on the Discovery Channel's Motorcycle Mania 2. Although the show primarily focused on Jesse James, Larry stole the spotlight with his mechanical skills, daring stunts, and deep thoughts about life. He followed this with appearances in 3 Biker Build-Off competitions, where he built custom bikes under intense time constraints and rode them across the country to compete against other builders. Larry won all 3 competitions, cementing his status as a legend in the motorcycle world. Larry's final appearance in Biker Build-Off in 2004 was bittersweet. He created the Chain of Mystery, a bike with a revolutionary frame made entirely of welded chain link. This design was risky, but Larry's meticulous craftsmanship made it a masterpiece. Tragically, Indian Larry's life was cut short during a daring stunt at a bike show in North Carolina. Known for his fearless spirit and death-defying stunts, Larry captivated audience with his signature move, standing upright on the seat of his moving motorcycle, arms outstretched in a powerful crucifix pose. It was a breathtaking display of balance, control, and sheer nerve, a stunt he performed countless times before. But on that fateful day, something went wrong. As Larry attempted the maneuver, the bike began to wobble. Unable to regain control, he was thrown from the motorcycle, suffering severe head injuries. Despite being rushed to the hospital, Larry passed away in the early hours of August 30th, 2004, at the age of 55. Larry's passing was a devastating loss to the motorcycle community and to all who admired his artistry, courage, and unyielding passion for life. He wasn't just a builder or a rider. He was a performer, a daredevil, and a thinker who embodied the spirit of freedom and creativity. His bikes weren't just machines. They were expressions of his soul, blending art, engineering, and philosophy. Larry's legacy lives on in the world of choppers and in the hearts of those who dared to live life on their own terms. Rest in peace, Indian Larry.